Welcome back, gentle listener, to another episode of Everything is a Spring. Let's jump right into the preload.
Oh,
Derek, how are you, buddy?
hey, Jim, I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing swell. I am just having a great day now that I'm hanging out with you.
I'll admit, my day did get a lot better when we started doing like pre-show. Like, I'm
Oh
ready
my
now.
gosh. Oh yeah. And so Derek, we're going to Hawaii.
We are going to Hawaii. Like, I'd never do anything for my birthday. I don't know. Last week I just broke and said this year's the year. So I really hope it
man.
works out for everybody because I'd love to see you there, man.
That'd be awesome. I really hope I can swing it. Yeah, so my parents went to Hawaii pretty recently, and it just was beautiful. So if we go, we got to do like some light scuba or snorkeling or something like that.
Yeah, I want to
That'd
hit
be
some
fun.
national parks. I'd like to do, if depending on if we have time, maybe a surfing lesson just to say I did.
Oh,
Right?
that'd be fun.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And like we talked about, if it's convenient, right? I know like they probably don't want tourists around where that disaster happened in Maui. But if there is opportunities to do maybe a little bit of humanitarian work while we're there, like give them 6 hours of our time and some free labor, I'd be happy to help any way I can.
Yeah, help out for an afternoon or a day.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great use of our time.
And
also a
Pay it
great way to
forward.
meet some of the people who are there and actually, on the island and doing stuff.
Yeah. Because like when Katrina
think
happened, we were kids. So like I couldn't do anything to help if I wanted to. So this is like, if I'm going to be there for vacation, I'd at least like to try to, get some good done.
Yeah, actually
small
help out
thing.
instead of just being a parasite that just suckles off the teat of the Hawaii.
Well, you'd be surprised. Tourism is actually
ecosystem
one
or
of their
whatever.
biggest, it's like one of their biggest revenue streams. So they've taken a huge hit for people not coming. Like they need the leeches.
True. That's true. I mean, like, I guess that's kind of like the catch-22, right? It's like you're like, all these tourists coming in and throwing trash everywhere and leaving sunscreen stains on the bus seats.
True.
But then also like, yeah, I mean, they bring in a lot of revenue.
It's a big part of the economy. We saw it, the same thing. It happened in 2020 with the pandemic. Like the tourism tanked because of the airline industry, and it's rough, man. Because like it's a huge catch-22. On one hand, like you said, get off my island. On the other hand, you got to pay the bills. Like we all got to pay the bills.
Yep, absolutely. But I guess what I would say is like there's ways to be a better tourist.
Exactly. I want to make sure I'm not a leech. Just leave like take the old trail adage. Leave no trace.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to make sure that you leave only benefits behind and
memories,
and make it better than you found it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Jim,
as
let's
opposed
get into it. I could talk about Hawaii all day, so please don't let me. I'm so excited.
Okay. We'll move forward. So Derek, we're kind of in the middle of this mini series. Is kind of what it's become about like tank failure and kind of these weird, offhanded disasters, right? With like weird fluids, right?
Weird fluids.
Weird fluids exploding out of tanks. And so the first weekend, the first episode we did was the Great Molasses Flood. And then we did the London beer flood. And now we're going to do something a little bit different. This particular event actually follows between the two. So the London beer flood was in, I think it was 1814.
Yeah.
Very early, very much in the throes of the Industrial Revolution. And we saw like this really callous attitude towards the loss of human life in that event. And then, we did the Great Molasses Flood, which happens in 1919, I believe. And we saw that was really one of the first class action lawsuits that provided an avenue for people to seek justice from these big corporations. And so now we're going to talk about something that kind of occurs between the two. This occurs on the 18th of June, 1875. So pretty much smack dab in the middle of the two. And it's a little bit of a different event than the other two we've talked about. So I'm interested to see kind of where our discussion goes.
All right.
But Derek, to ask the question, what's your favorite whiskey?
Oh man, that's an easy one. I love me some Woodford Reserve. No thought on that one. Final answer.
That's great. Yeah, a good classic bourbon. I like it. Yeah, Woodford's good. I have actually been getting into Blade and Bow recently.
Ooh, what'd you think?
Is,
I've had that through you a couple times.
It's delicious. It's a wonderful bourbon.
Put it in your whiskey grill for extra flavor.
That's exactly how I enjoy it. Oftentimes I'll make like a mint julep in it.
Your mint julep slap. Grill.
I'm here for it. So that's always a good time.
Jim's mint juleps bring people together.
But Derek, what would you do with, I don't know, maybe 315,000 U.S. gallons of whiskey?
350,000 gallons of whiskey. One day it's going to be in the range of I can just drink it all, right? But that's enough whiskey for a few lifetimes. I would probably cry tears of joy, and I'd start selling. I'd be selling whiskey secondhand.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's a lot of whiskey.
I mean, so the equivalent value of that whiskey is 4.5 million pounds
in like 1870s money, or
in modern money. So at the time it was 54,000 pounds, which is the equivalent to about about 5,500.
I'd be like
today.
Donald Duck. Well, I guess more like Donald Duck's rich uncle or whatever. Just swimming in it.
And that is, let's see, what did I say? It was 4.5.
Conversion time.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what it is in US dollars because I don't speak British. Yeah, so it's about 6.68 million US dollars.
That's like one house nowadays. That's a lot of money.
That's true. I mean, I'm really hoping the housing market is a spring so I can someday afford to buy property.
Yeah, and my net value of life can bounce back.
I know, right? It's just like, oh my gosh.
That 350,000 gallons of whiskey, again, is almost impossible to visualize in my head. Like, that's a lot of whiskey.
Yeah, so to break that down into maybe a more manageable unit of measurement, that is 5,000 hogsheads. And a hogshead is a type of barrel.
Oh, I thought that say who is weighing pigs' heads and making that a measurement, but I'm glad that there's some logic to it.
We took a pig and cut its head off and emptied it out and filled it with whiskey, and that's how we store our liquor.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween. Exactly. So, yeah, so a hogshead is it's basically 2 standard-sized barrels. So it's quite large. It is 30 inches in diameter and 48 inches tall. So
okay, that's easier. That's a good kegger right there.
Yeah, it's about, let's see, it says it's 145 gallons. Basically.
No, there we go.
So that's a pretty big wooden barrel.
You got a warehouse of whiskey right there.
Yeah. Oh, that's a tobacco. Sorry, that's a tobacco hogshead. A regular hogshead is 80 US gallons.
80 gallons.
80 gallons.
And how many hogsheads?
One. There's 5,000. 5,000 hogsheads. So it's quite a lot of barrels. So, okay, so let's say you're storing all these hogsheads. Derek, where would you store like 5,000, basically like 55-gallon drums?
Oh gosh, all right.
Of whiskey.
I would, if to do it the smart way, right? I'd build a massive cellar, massive cellar, get a nice ventilation system in there, maybe some climate control for the mildew problems. And then I'd put it under lock and key, and that's where I'd spend all my time. I would never leave.
That's fair. Well, these people decided to do a very similar thing. They stored their barrels of whiskey. In this case, it was in the bonded storehouse on the corner of Ardee Street, this is in Dublin. So this is in Dublin, Ireland. Where else would they have 5,000 barrels of whiskey?
I heard that's where whiskey's born, right?
Yeah. So Ireland. Ireland has a lot of whiskey. They do that. The Irish love to drink. That's kind of like the old.
That's the old stereotype, but in their defense, so do I. You know what I mean?
This is true. I mean, who doesn't, right? It's very good. So in this area of Dublin called the Liberties, there's a single night event called the Dublin Whiskey Fire.
Like that's an event?
Yes, it's called the Dublin Whiskey Fire. No. They didn't plan it.
Oh,
but
okay.
It's become known as the Dublin Whiskey Fire.
Like, this wasn't like, there's not flyers up. Dublin Whiskey Fire next week.
They're like, everybody come out for the Dublin Whiskey Fire next Tuesday at 7:00 p.m.
Hear ye.
Exactly. Hear ye. I guess it'd be more like, I guess it'd be Irish, right? So, come on now for the Dublin Whiskey Fire next Tuesday night at 7:00 p.m.
That's pretty good.
Thank you.
That's way better than I could do.
Oh, just a lick of the Irish in me.
Oh, there you
go. Just a little bit.
See, we're branching out. This is for our Irish listeners for the future.
Exactly. And I hope that people in Ireland, don't hate us for this horrible rendition that we're giving of their tragedies. But
if they want to correct us, they can be happy to be guest on the show and tell us about it themselves.
We would love to have an Irish expert on the show. Reach out to us at All Our Spring at Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter. Exactly.
There you go. All Our Spring, Twitter.
You nailed it.
Perfect.
All right.
Look at me plugging away. Anyway.
Plugging away.
So, it kills 13 people.
Oh, well, that takes a turn. It had to at some point.
But it kills them in a way that you might not expect. So let's go ahead and kind of dive into the backstory of the Dublin Whiskey Fire. So basically, the warehouse where all the whiskey is located, they lock it up at 4:30 p.m. when they check the warehouse, and kind of everybody starts to go home for the evening. And then a fire. It's quitting time. Time to go home. Go back to the missus. Go back to the kids. Get drunk. That's how it do. Be Irish. Be drunk and Irish. Exactly. So at some point, a fire starts in a nearby warehouse.
Oh, so it didn't start at the whiskey warehouse.
We don't think so. It's hard to say because this all happened so far back. But basically, the exact cause of fire is not known, but it has to start sometime a little bit before 8:30 p.m. That's when the alarm was raised. So the fire lights, stuff starts burning. Around 9:30 p.m., the barrels start to get hot, right? Now, Derek, we've talked a little bit about heat and what it does to different things. What do you think heat does to wooden barrels?
All right, so from our previous conversations, I've gathered that wooden barrels are usually just a wooden cast with metal rings around it, right? Heat expands things and causes things to boil. We know that whiskey has vapor. So I'm assuming the first thing that gets really hot is that metal on the outside. If it's anything like our last tank we talked about, that was like a big... I'm guessing one of the rings fell off, or like it doesn't hold anymore?
Not exactly. So keep going with your thought process, because you're on the right track.
Okay, so heat expands... Wait, maybe the ring doesn't expand enough. Is this like making these cast into like small explosives?
Yes.
Because it just goes pop?
Yes. So it's basically what it does is the heat in the warehouse boils the whiskey inside of the cask and creates these little bombs that
oh
just
my
explode.
Gosh, I hate it when I'm right. Nothing good happens when I'm right, Jim.
But not all of the whiskey just becomes vapor, because there's like 300,000 gallons of whiskey. So all these barrels start popping.
Holy.
And the whiskey has to go somewhere. And so it starts running down the street in a 6-inch deep river of whiskey.
Like I said, any other day, celebration time.
That's on fire as it goes down the street.
Holy crap. So the whiskey it's alcoholic enough to just be flammable on its own? Like it'll just settle out?
It is. And the reason, and this is actually important to the story, because the reason that it is because it has not yet been diluted.
Oh.
So when you make whiskey, there's what's called cask strength whiskey. And that is basically the undiluted whiskey. And then when you bottle it off, normally you dilute it a little bit to bring the alcohol content down into the like I guess it'd be like 40 to 60 proof usually.
So
but then
what's
cask strength
whiskey?
is like
Is that like 90 to 100?
I don't think it's that bad. Cask strength whiskey.
Or it's not like what we would consider like grain alcohol in the States, right? Like it's not Everclear.
No, it's not. Cask strength whiskey is like 60 plus.
And what's
alcohol by
if
volume.
I recall correctly,
so that's like 120 proof.
So the proof, if it's over 100 proof, it's flammable, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So like normal whiskey is like, I probably like
80?
60 to 80 proof, and then so like cask strength is like 120 proof. So it's flammable.
So this is just a volatile liquid that they've stored in. Oh my goodness.
It is. So the Irish and actually, I will say, so the Irish residents all come out into the streets because there's a river of whiskey.
That's pretty hype. At first, think about how exciting that must have been. It's Christmas.
It's pretty hype. Right?
I go outside and go get my everything that can hold water, fill it up.
And that's exactly what the people of Dublin did that day. They literally, people, like, I read about it, people were like getting their pulling their shoes off and like getting their shoes full of whiskey and then drinking it, right? And like cups, bowls, hats, anything. People would like scoop it up with their hands and drink it.
Yes.
I mean, it's wild. Remember, this is like going down the street.
This is a celebration up until.
This is wild. So then the people basically, they were alerted to the fire because there was a livestock pen that caught fire and the pigs were like squealing. Yeah, it was just pretty nasty. But basically, this is actually said to have contributed to like a really rapid evacuation of the area. So
I can't imagine you can breathe in those fumes if you wanted to.
No, not in the warehouse. But the warehouse fire actually was like really well responded to. So the mayor of Dublin actually says this: the time given for escape in some places during the progress of the fire was so short, I was apprehensive that some people should be left in danger in the garrets and cellars of the district. But on inquiry, I was happy to learn that no life was lost during the great conflagration.
Huh. Well, shout out to the fire department there. Like,
yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so the fire department was like on it, but like there's no way they can really put it out. They're just kind of containing, and they just kind of have to let it burn out, right? So the whiskey's just going. And yeah, people are just like getting the whiskey out of a river of, it's like 6-inch deep river of whiskey that goes like several blocks.
You'd have to beg people to evacuate.
You would, yeah. And so basically what ends up happening is that 24 people get hospitalized for alcohol poisoning because they're not used to the strength of the alcohol.
Oh, so they're like, I can usually drink like, 4, 5, 6 shots of whiskey. This is just like double the ante.
It is. And so they get toasted. And then because of that, 13 people died because of alcohol
so they didn't
poisoning.
die from the fire?
Nobody even gets hurt in the fire.
That is the biggest twist of our show so far. You're kidding me.
I'm not. It's true.
It's not funny, but it's kind of funny.
It's kind of
funny. That would be me. I mean, it's just like, there were no casualties. The mayor comes out, there were no casualties until...
There were no casualties until poor Billy drank too much and got himself sick. Like, yeah,
that's
exactly.
Rough. So 13 was just... We got to remember those 13 brave souls.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What a way to go. The strongest drink of your life.
Like, pretty solid way to go.
That's pretty metal. That's if you got to go. It's like, hey, did you hear about the guys that died in the whiskey fire? Didn't even burn.
They didn't even burn. They died because they
drank
too much. They partied too hard.
But gentle listener, please drink responsibly.
Please drink. And this is why, right? Exactly. But yeah, like nobody gets, seriously burned. Nobody dies of smoke inhalation.
Really?
They drank. The quote is, "They drank freely from the derelict whiskey and so perished."
And so perished. God damn.
So
that is all. I hate to say that is awesome. Like that's
it's pretty great. So yeah, and so like I guess that's kind of the story of this. And I guess the question then becomes like, this is not like a typical engineering disaster.
Right?
We have a pretty good idea of like what happened. We don't know why the fire started. And I guess the question then becomes, like the reaction to this event was obviously very different because I think in this case, like we don't have a very clear instance of like the company being at fault.
No, like a fire started. This is something you could predict, but you couldn't prevent. And from what it sounds like, the city, the fire department, and the municipalities actually did their due diligence to try to get people to evacuate. And the fact that there were no casualties in a fire around something so flammable, that's saying something. Like, that's a win in itself, right?
Yeah, I think this is actually like a huge point of like progress that I really want to stress, because like this is basically 60 years after the London beer flood, right? And obviously there's no fire involved here, but like there just seems to be a lot more care given to like, let's make sure we get our people out.
It seems like for the most part, the folks were celebrating. Like there was no perceived danger is what I mean. There was minimal panic based on the reports.
Yeah, there definitely seems to like have been a very ordered, like, so the Dublin Fire Brigade under the leadership of Captain James Ingram has basically basically is telling people like, hey, we can't stop the fire. We just have to stop the spread of it.
Right.
So we just have to like kind of cordon off the area and
like get a control line going.
And exactly.
Make sure the city doesn't burn down.
Exactly. And so that's kind of and then they use horse manure to create dams to control the flow of the burning whiskey.
God, there's always a catch.
There's always a catch.
Horse manure.
to try to prevent the whiskey from hitting buildings to catch those on fire.
You gotta do what you gotta do, I guess, but that's a rough... Can you imagine the firefighter you're telling to do that? That's a rough job.
Yeah,
that's a bad day at work.
It is. But, it is what it is, and they
saved the city.
They saved the city. Nobody dies in the fire.
It's the biggest parentheses of all times. Nobody died in the
asterisk.
fire.
Yeah, nobody dies. Asterisk. In the fire.
Long pause.
Yeah. Long pause.
In the fire.
In the fire. and yeah, so it's just kind of this wild event where we have this really amazing response from the public servants and, relatively calm and orderly conduct from the civilians of the populace. Other than that, they're really just interested in getting the whiskey.
Yeah, shout out to the city of Dublin. They had their priorities in check. There was no hatred that day.
Hey, boys, get out of the cellar. That's going to flood with fire whiskey. Get out into the street where you can scoop it up and take a swig.
You imagine you're in the pub, right? You're in the pub and you're like getting kicked out of the pub and it's just, all right, day's done. And then you wouldn't believe your eyes. If you look down, it's just like, oh, it's starting to rain. Oh, no.
No, what's this? It smells like alcohol. It's whiskey, me boys.
There's one person who had a bad day that day, besides the 13 that died from alcohol poisoning, unfortunately. One guy got his 5-year AA chip that morning and had to make the hardest decision of their life. It's like, heaven sent a river of whiskey. Do you have the self-control?
That man's got to either be there's two paths you can go with that, right? You can either, if you resist the temptation, you're just like, nothing.
You're the strongest person of all time.
Or you're just like, well, God has ordained that
exactly. Wouldn't you use that as an excuse? It's just like, I did my due diligence. I asked for a sign, and it's a river of whiskey, baby. Let's go.
There's a river of whiskey. What can we really do about it? So
that's the... All right, minus the 13 folks that unfortunately died due to their overdoing it a touch. It's not their fault. They didn't know that. I'm sure the average man doesn't know what cask strength whiskey is unless that's your area of expertise, right? I would have sat there and been like, what's a couple cups of whiskey gonna do?
Yeah, and so that I think becomes the question, right? Is there any responsibility on that front, in terms of lack of containment or anything like this? And I don't know. I think that's a much less clear clear thing, right? Like where I really don't think we can lay a whole lot of blame at the feet of the company.
I can't. In my opinion, right, Jim? Like, this is the way I look at it, right? The company did their best to, like, have things in a cellar, have things stored properly. They got an outlier. Great.
Yep.
River of Whiskey comes, municipalities did their job, fire brigade, got the word out. Like you said, you got folks building dams to stop the fire with manure. So they're doing their due diligence. I feel like there is, and this is where folks, we're going to lose some people, right? There is a responsibility for the public to be at least aware of their own mortality. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, this isn't 2023. This is the 1800s. Natural selection is all around you, as easy as those 13 passed away from, unfortunately, alcohol poisoning, it could have been disease or something. Because think about it. This is the streets, right? There's horses everywhere. Disease is possible.
I think there's also a question of, like, is it really a good idea to drink whiskey out of the street?
No, but hey, let's be honest, Jeff. If it were me and you chilling on a front porch or something, and you saw it happen, wouldn't you? Maybe at first I'd be a little bit like, that's weird. I'd probably scoop a whiskey grill or two. I'm being honest.
I mean, yeah, but like one or two, right? Like, you're not like gonna take your boot off and like fill it and like drink your whole boot of whiskey.
I'll keep it a buck with you. I might pour the milk down the sink and rinse that bad boy out just to store a little bit.
Get the bottle. Yeah, but like save it for later. Don't have it all in one go.
Don't bust your whole load at one time.
Exactly. You don't want to sproing your whole spring all at once.
Yeah. You got to keep some of it compressed. What do they say in Letterkenny? No mistake, big mistake.
Big mistake.
But yeah, you got to have some self-control, folks. Like, this ain't the SEC. Relax.
Yeah, and so like I think part of this too is like there is a certain level of personal responsibility that has to be taken even in today's day and age. And you have to wonder, like, have we gone too far in terms of, like, you got the woman who spills. This is, like, kind of the classic example that's actually been, which we probably should cover at some point, is, like, the McDonald's coffee.
Oh, the scalding, yeah. The reason that there's warning labels on stuff is man's stupidity. And I mean all of us. Like, people's stupidity.
Correct. Although apparently, like, the McDonald's scalding thing was, like, actually legit.
Oh, yeah. I think they actually had it higher temperature than it was supposed to be at spec. So that lady was right. Yeah. But the reason that there's a caution hot in multiple languages on your McDonald's coffee is because someone got hurt by it. Let's just say she never got hurt. No one ever reported it. There'd probably be more injuries because of that. It's the reason, like, if you go into a chemistry lab, you see all these things and every single bottle is just like, don't drink it. And people, that means someone down the line just was like, delicious.
What's in this Erlenmeyer flask? It looks so sciencey. I'd better have a swig.
This tastes like, and that's the last thought you have.
Liquid science.
It tastes like science.
Tastes like science.
I remember there was a chemistry lab in undergraduate that you have to do where the long and short of it is one of the byproducts is a type of nitrogen-based gas, right? And in the like lesson plan and the SOP, the instructions for this lab, there's a very specific note where it's just like, you're just going to produce this brown gas. Here's the chemical formula. Don't sniff it. It is not nitrous oxide. It is not nitrous oxide. You're not going to get high. You're just going to have to go to the hospital because it's going to become liquid in your lungs. No. Liquid acid in your lungs.
And let me guess what somebody did.
No, I'm guessing the reason that they put that warning there is because some undergraduate back in the times early of someone was just like, you know what? I read this in a book or like, I guess, newspaper. You can get high off this. And then they ended up with liquid in their lungs that happened to also be acid. There's got to be.
Sniff it.
I'm going to sniff it.
I'm going to sniff it.
So yeah, responsible adults out there, drink responsibly, read your warning labels, and for the love of God, don't be the reason that a new one exists.
That's true, yeah. It's like those 3 rules, right? Don't add to the population, don't subtract to the population. And don't go to prison.
Yeah, don't go to, It's interesting. I'll admit, I didn't give Dublin enough credit going into this. Rip the 13 that gone too soon, but they went out partying.
What a better Irish way to go. That's
pretty
the
on
true
brand.
That's the real Irish goodbye right there.
Like, think about it. You could transplant that entire situation. Let's take the whole situation and bring it to like Nashville, Tennessee, to one of the bourbon whiskey factories over here. You could see the same thing happening, you know?
The exact same thing would happen.
Yeah, like Americans, we're not so different, you and I.
Yeah, exactly. But probably some people would die in the fire because, this is America.
We'll find a way.
That way. We'll find a way.
We'll find a way.
There'll be somebody who's just like, I gotta save those barrels of whiskey.
Oh, let me fill a trash bag full of it in my trunk.
Exactly. It's still on fire. They throw it in the back of the car. The car burns down. It's just like,
it's really lucky that it's something that has a reasonable flashpoint. So it's not like one of those liquids that will be on fire, but you can't visually tell,
Right. Yeah. Like it's not explosive, right?
Right.
It's not like gasoline where it'll just explode.
Oof.
Yeah, that'd be rough.
That's a pretty short one for us this week, but honestly, it's a pretty. That's the best feel-good story we've had so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the episode. I mean, I guess we're just kind of waffling at this point.
Yeah.
We're just kind of slowly unwinding.
Well, Jim, you have anything to plug?
I guess if you happen to see a burning river of whiskey coming down your street, the perfect drinking vessel to capture it is, of course, the Whiskey Grail, which is a charred white oak drinking vessel, which will pair very nicely with the burning whiskey. And it'll help smooth out some of the harsher notes of the alcohol, take away some of that burning sensation as you drink it, and bring some of those more subtle flavors up to the front where you can truly enjoy it as you slowly succumb to the alcohol poisoning from the cask strength whiskey that you scooped up from the street.
Oh, no.
Ignore the small brown bits of horse manure in it. It just adds to the flavor, and the whiskey will kill the bacteria anyway. So,
medical disclaimer, whiskey does not necessarily kill bacteria.
So pick up your Whiskey Grail today at www.whiskeygrail.com. Find us on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok at The Whiskey Grail.
And find us at the Everything's a Spring podcast, guys, at All Our Spring. Let us know what you thought about the episode. Let us know about the length. I think this is the shortest one we've done. And we'll see you guys next week.
This one's short and sweet. Derek, love you. Thanks for coming on. And we'll talk to you later.
Let's bounce.
Let's bounce.